Under a stormy sky of global tension, Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky blasted Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying the Kremlin chief is too scared to admit to U.S. President Donald Trump that he plans to keep the conflict burning and spill more blood on Ukrainian soil. The world now waits with bated breath as Moscow ponders its next move on a 30-day pause in fighting, leaving hearts pounding in anxious anticipation. In a raw and heartfelt broadcast, Zelensky accused Putin of ducking the truth, avoiding a direct chat with Trump about his desire to press on with the invasion. His words, simple yet cutting, rang out like a sharp slap in a quiet room, making everyone wonder, can a leader hide behind silence when lives hang in the balance? Earlier that afternoon, Putin offered a nod of approval to the idea of a ceasefire pushed by American plans, but quickly added that he had serious questions needing answers. He even hinted that a direct call with Trump might be the way to sort out these details. His voice, heavy with uncertainty, made the air feel electric with unanswered questions, leaving many to ask what those serious questions really were. Calmly, Putin declared that while he supported a 30-day stop in the fighting, there were tricky details and hidden angles that must be cleared up first. It was as if he were setting up a complex game of chess where every move counted, a move that left everyone waiting on tenterhooks for the next play. Maybe it's time we speak directly with our American friends, perhaps even have a call with President Trump, he suggested, his tone trailing off into the charged silence that followed. The idea hovered in the air like an unsolved puzzle, daring listeners to imagine what might come next. Not missing a beat, Zelensky fired back in his nightly address. He labeled Putin a master at playing games, a man whose words were as predictable as an old, worn-out record. His critique sliced through the evening calm, leaving a lingering echo that demanded the truth behind every twist. In that same address, Zelensky made it clear, Putin is simply too scared to face Trump and openly say he wants to keep this war alive, a war that costs countless Ukrainian lives. His plain-spoken remarks struck home, leaving viewers with a mix of anger and hope, as if every word carried a challenge to the status quo. He painted a vivid picture of Moscow's plan, a scheme where silence is offered with so many strings attached that nothing real happens, or at best, progress is stalled for as long as possible. This portrayal of calculated delays stirred a sense of unease, prompting everyone to ask, is this just another trick to keep the conflict alive? With a shake of his head, Zelensky dismissed Putin's words as nothing more than typical Russian manipulation. His tone was firm and unwavering, as if to say that the Kremlin's playbook is as old as time and no one is falling for it anymore. Not long before these sharp exchanges, Putin had talked about setting up a system to watch over any breaks in the truce. He also raised the issue of whether Ukraine might use the pause to regroup and rearm. His careful planning seemed to sketch out a battlefield where every move had a hidden cost, a thought that left many uneasy about what lay ahead. He made it clear that stopping the fighting was fine, but only if that break led to real, lasting peace, a peace that would fix the deep problems at the heart of this crisis. His words, though smooth, were met with lingering doubts. Can a pause truly mend a broken world? Putin insisted that any ceasefire must blossom into long-term peace, a promise that sounded fragile in the harsh light of reality. This claim hung in the air like a whisper in a dark room, leaving all eyes fixed on what might come next. Zelensky quickly shot back, saying that Ukraine never makes things more complicated with extra conditions, unlike Russia, which always finds a way to twist simple ideas into knots. His retort was like a challenge thrown down in the middle of a tense standoff, daring the Kremlin to explain its tangled demands. As we've always said, the one who drags things out and refuses to be constructive is Russia, he declared, each word hammering home the point that peace was being sabotaged by deliberate delay. His voice, steady and resolute, left a mark of defiance in the cool night air. He did not hold back, accusing Putin of wanting the war to rage on, of stealing years of possible peace, and of letting the conflict grind on day after day. This powerful charge was like a thunderclap, a call to remember all the time lost and lives shattered in the fight. Once again, Zelensky underscored that in Moscow, any talk of a ceasefire is loaded with impossible conditions meant to stop any real change. His words echoed with a bitter clarity, when will this endless stalling come to an end? As his address drew to a close, Zelensky urged international allies to step up and put more pressure on Putin, pushing for tougher sanctions to force real change. His plea, full of urgency and hope, was a rallying cry that left listeners ready for action, wondering if the world would finally unite to break the cycle of violence. He pointed out that with the strength of American and European support, these tough measures were within reach, a light in an otherwise dark corridor, hinting at the possibility of a breakthrough if the global community stood firm. Zelensky believed that a pause in the fighting could give time to answer all the big questions about long-term security and to lay down a plan that could finally end the war. His idea, simple yet profound, promised a chance to rebuild, a quiet hope amid the chaos that begged the question, can this moment be turned into a lasting solution? Meanwhile, Putin's claims of seeking peace clashed sharply with remarks from his own aide, Yuri Ushakov. Earlier, Ushakov had described the proposed ceasefire as rushed, a mere break that would give Ukrainian forces a chance to catch their breath just as Moscow was on the verge of reclaiming key territory in the Kursk area. The conflicting voices created a discordant note that left many wondering which truth would ultimately prevail. Putin boasted that Russian troops were pushing forward along nearly the entire front line and said that his next steps regarding the ceasefire would depend on how well the campaign in Kursk fared. His bold statement filled the air with both defiance and uncertainty, a mix that made every moment feel like the calm before another storm. He went on to say that while Ukrainian soldiers had once managed to leave in groups, now that escape was blocked entirely. He warned that if a full blockade were set up in the coming days, there would be only two grim choices left, surrender or face death. This stark warning sent a shiver down the spine of anyone listening, as it painted a picture of a future where hope might vanish in an instant. Putin further claimed that although it looked like the U.S. had convinced Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire, it was really the desperate conditions on the battlefield that forced their hand. He noted that Ukrainian troops making a bold move into Russia's Kursk region were soon to be completely cut off. His explanation was laced with tension, urging everyone to look closer at the real reasons behind the push for a break. In these tough conditions, it would be smart for Ukraine to secure a ceasefire for at least 30 days, he said, suggesting that this pause might offer a moment to catch one's breath in a suffocating fight. The idea, practical yet ominous, invited deep thought about the price of survival. With a challenging tone, he then asked if the Ukrainian troops in Kursk would really come out without a fight, a question that lingered like a riddle in the minds of many. It was a moment that left viewers on the edge, pondering the true nature of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. In a surprising twist, Putin thanked Trump for paying such close attention to finding a settlement in Ukraine. The gratitude, unexpected and layered with irony, raised eyebrows and left a curious aftertaste in the unfolding drama. He didn't stop there. He also expressed thanks to the leaders of China, India, Brazil, and South Africa for their so-called noble mission to reduce casualties, a subtle nod hinting at their potential role in shaping a ceasefire deal. This extra detail added another layer of intrigue, making one wonder about the hidden alliances in play. Shortly before these remarks, during a live TV chat, Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov had made it clear that the ceasefire was nothing more than a brief break for Ukraine, a momentary pause with no promise of lasting change. His blunt words served as a warning. This was not the start of true peace, but merely a temporary lull. He described Moscow's real aim as carving out a long-term settlement that truly reflected Russia's interests and concerns, far beyond a short-lived truce. His vision, though couched in calm language, left a lingering sense of foreboding. Was there a real plan behind these words, or just more smoke and mirrors? With a dismissive shrug, Ushakov added that no one needs steps that just mimic peace. Those actions, he implied, were empty gestures that only worsened the situation. His tone was both firm and final, urging everyone to look past the surface of any so-called peaceful measures. When TV host Olga Skabeva, often called Putin's Iron Doll, pressed him on whether this stance meant Moscow was outright rejecting Trump's ceasefire, his reply was vague and ominous. The president will probably soon offer more specific thoughts. That answer, wrapped in mystery, left viewers hanging and eager for the next chapter. Drawing on his past as Moscow's ambassador to the U.S., Ushakov later revealed that he had already briefed U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on Russia's position regarding the ceasefire. This quiet disclosure hinted at a behind-the-scenes diplomatic dance that few fully understood. In the hours after Putin visited his commanders in Kursk, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed to have reclaimed the town of Sudza, a key hub for Ukrainian operations in the area. Yet, this claim could not be verified independently, and Ukrainian officials chose to stay silent, adding yet another puzzle piece to an already murky picture. This renewed push by Russian forces, coupled with Putin's high-profile visit to his troops, came at a time when Trump was pushing hard for a diplomatic end to the war, a conflict that has now raged for over 3 long years since the full-scale invasion began. The timing was uncanny, leaving everyone to wonder if a turning point was finally near. Then, on Tuesday, the U.S. lifted its March 3rd suspension of military aid for Kyiv after top officials from both sides reported small but hopeful steps in talks held in Saudi Arabia. This move shone like a small light in a dark tunnel, hinting at the possibility of progress if the dialogue continued. On Wednesday, Trump declared firmly that the next move was up to Russia, as his administration kept pressing Moscow to agree to a ceasefire, warning that fresh sanctions were on the table if they did not join the peace talks. His words carried the weight of imminent consequences, making it clear that the stakes were higher than ever. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent later told CNBC on Thursday that Trump was ready to apply maximum pressure on all sides, including top-level sanctions aimed squarely at Russia. This firm stance sent a clear signal: the U.S. was not willing to back down easily. Yet, a Kremlin advisory document hinted that all this pressure might not work as planned. The memo suggested that despite the heavy-handed tactics, the intended effect might fall short, leaving many to wonder if the strategy could ever break the stalemate. According to the document, Putin intends to keep fighting in Ukraine while also weakening Trump's negotiating strength in any peace talks by stirring up tension between the U.S. and other global powers. The plan, as revealed in the report, was as bold as it was risky, setting the stage for a long-term geopolitical tug-of-war. Even as Washington pushed for a ceasefire, a report from a well-placed Kremlin-linked think tank, obtained by a major U.S. news outlet, revealed that Russia had been actively undermining any possible peace deal since at least February. This insight added a twist that made everyone sit up and question the true motives behind Moscow's moves. The document, reportedly written by a respected Moscow-based think tank just before talks in Saudi Arabia, showed that some of its measures had already steered Russian policy. It was like watching hidden gears turning behind closed doors, directing the next steps in this dangerous game. Within its pages, the paper outlined how Russia could boost its own standing by fanning the flames of discord between the U.S., China, and the EU, a plan that sounded both simple and dangerously provocative. The strategy was a clear reminder that in this global chess match, every move carried heavy risks. In a surprising twist, the U.S. had twice sided with Russia in UN votes, a move that sharply reversed its long-held stance and alarmed its allies. The unexpected backing left many scratching their heads, as it signaled a shift that no one had seen coming. One such moment came at the General Assembly when the U.S. opposed a European-drafted resolution condemning Moscow and standing by Ukraine's borders. That vote, a rare departure from the norm, hinted at the complex web of international loyalties at play. The other instance occurred at the Security Council, where the U.S. backed a resolution calling for an end to Russia's invasion without directly calling out Russia. This careful balancing act left onlookers questioning the true motives behind such a nuanced stance. The Kremlin-linked think tank's document went further, arguing that, given these shifts, Russia should work toward completely dismantling the current Ukrainian government, a bold call that underscored the deep ambitions driving the conflict. This stark proposal left a bitter aftertaste, prompting many to ask what the endgame really was. In the final twist of this unfolding saga, Putin sidestepped the hot topic of a ceasefire ahead of talks with Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, whose plane was tracked heading toward Moscow, and instead ordered his troops to focus on regaining lost ground in Kursk. This move, abrupt and full of tension, ended the day's events on a cliffhanger, leaving everyone to wonder, what will be the next shocking move in this high-stakes drama?